This is the Wifed Up Now What podcast. I'm Coriel, and this conversation is all about marriage management advice for millennial wives. Today, we have two very special people in the studio. Now, they are near and dear to me personally, but y'all are going to fall in love with them too. Please welcome to the show, the Foresters. We have Dr. Michael and Lorraine in the building.
Good morning.
Hey,
Good morning.
Hello. Oh, but I will say one thing though,
Yes.
Coriel, is that you forgot one piece of it.
What did I forget?
The one and only, the incomparable Lorraine Forrest.
That part. Look, so
and Michael.
we're already getting some marriage management advice. We're getting a little bit of wisdom within the first few seconds. I mentioned that y'all are near and dear to me because y'all were is it counselors? Premarital counselors.
Yes.
Okay, premarital counselors, our officiants for our wedding, our post-marital counselors, all of the things. And so I'm always excited whenever I have the opportunity. Well, let me not lie. I was going to say I'm excited when I have the opportunity to talk to y'all. It's usually not very exciting, but I'm excited when I have the opportunity to talk to y'all publicly.
Right.
When it ain't just about me and my problems.
Right.
But we're going to talk a little bit about me and my problems today,
Okay.
which is what this podcast is all about, though, because we have been led to believe that getting the husband was the hard part. You know, that's the word on the street. It's like single ladies, you got to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to get a man. But what's on the other side of the marriage? That is what this conversation is all about. It's like you've done it, girl. But now that honeymoon is starting to fizzle away and real life starts, real work starts. So I would love for y'all to start by just telling a little bit about your marriage. So how long have you been married? And then talk a little bit about the work that you all do as a couple.
And well, I'll just say, to you as well, you guys are very near and dear to our heart as well.
Yes, definitely.
We consider you to be some of our adopted children.
Thank you.
You've been adopted into the family. Definitely love you guys. And,
Love you too.
we definitely appreciate you having us here.
Of course.
And I think I'm going to defer to my wife because she tells this story so much
Oh my goodness! What story?
better than I do. But I will say, though, that, one of the things that I just really cherish, we met 42 years ago. And I was thinking about it this morning. The fact is, and it might even be a little bit shallow, but I remember when I first saw her, that there was something about her. It was her smile and her nose. And I think, that sounds kind of weird, right?
Hey,
but that was something that captivated me from minute one.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you go ahead and finish.
And he's still got this smile on his face, baby.
And he loves to play with my nose. But so we did meet 42 years ago. It was love at first sight. I love the Porsche that he was driving.
Okay.
No, that's what caught my interest. But initially, I'll say, long story short, it was not love at first sight. He actually went to friend zone for a minute there. And then meeting his family, knowing how he was raised and all of that is what helped me to allow him to be more in my life.
Okay.
And in my son's life. I had a son who was 1 year old. So long story short, we've been married 38 years. And all of them have been absolutely perfect. I've been the perfect wife.
That part.
Okay, now the truth.
The truth, yes.
So there were a lot of things that happened that I did not expect, that he did not expect. I definitely put him on a pedestal. I thought he was so far beyond the average guy, and found out that was not true. Found out that was not true, and which is why we do what we do. We ran into some very difficult times that included my non-negotiables.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you just said so much to unpack because I know some of those difficult parts. They don't know some of those difficult parts, but I want to talk through some of them because the expectation that we have when we enter marriage is what leads us astray a lot of times. Not only is it our own personal expectation, sometimes we don't even really know what our expectation is, and then we get there and it's like, well, this ain't what I thought, but I didn't really think about anything. So we don't really know our expectation, and if we don't know it, we can't communicate our expectations so that our partner could actually meet our expectation.
Exactly.
What do you feel is a realistic expectation for a woman becoming a wife? Like, what should her real expectation be? Because a lot of us enter marriage and it's like, wait a minute, hold on. This ain't what I thought it was.
Yeah, there are several things. Number one, expect that things are going to change, period. And all of those ideas about things will ultimately go smoothly because we love each other and we're pretty much on the same page when we say I do. But the reality is, first of all, you need to do premarital counseling before you say I do. And that way, some of the topics will be discussed. So you'll have an idea of what you're getting into. And then once you get into the marriage, to understand that things are not going to always go smoothly. Finances need to be considered, how you manage your finances, how you manage blending family and friends. You need to also consider your sex life, your spirituality. All of those things are things that you have to really think about. What is it, as you said, what is it that I want so I can communicate to my mate what I want and they'll understand it. So
you mentioned something about his family, like seeing his family and then you're like, okay, he can come on out the friend zone. We can give this a try. I think so often we overlook not just how your family is showing up. Like you go around and it's like, oh, they're cool or they're nice or whatever. But like, how were you raised? What did you witness in your home? What was your experience with relationships or communication or finances? All of those things I think we overlook because we're looking at his Porsche or we're looking at, what social media tells us is important, and then we're forgetting about the real things that are going to matter once the marriage truly begins. What would you say are some of the most common challenges that y'all are seeing? Because y'all work with people premarital, but on the other side, we be sending, y'all are in our Rolodex, like, look, call them today. We send y'all so many people, and I know somebody sent us to y'all, so I know that's kind of how y'all get around, but what are some of the common things that you're seeing in this modern day marriage? Like, what's really going on?
And usually I think one of the main things is the communication dilemma. As with most situations, everything that happens needs to be communicated. So usually learning how to communicate effectively is an issue. And one thing that has come out recently is that family support is one of the number one reasons couples are divorcing today. For
lack of family support.
Exactly. So that has changed. Usually it's always been communication, sex, and finances. Now lack of family support. And I guess that's because we're so busy doing so many things. We have 3 or 4 different jobs, all these streams of income. So we're not supporting each other.
If I could just chime in just 1 second, in terms of the expectations, I think that there needs to be an expectation that you need to be flexible, because despite, the upbringing, the family background, and even though those things are, they look ideal, that does not guarantee that what you experience in the marriage is going to reflect the same as what your mate might have, experienced in your life.
Yes. Would you say that is accurate? Because something else you said that I could personally identify with and relate to is the pedestal that you had him on, that you just thought, oh, perfect man, perfect husband. And then it's even harder when they fall off of that pedestal. Can you talk a little bit about that process of how he was able to fall off the pedestal, but then you didn't walk away? You were still able, well, you might have walked away and came on back, but you were still able to piece it back together somehow. And what does it look like on the other side now that you know he's not perfect?
Yeah. And he would always tell me, look, I'm not perfect. You think too highly of me. But I was looking at his family, his mom, dad, great people. They taught him well, had great morals. His siblings, they got along very well. They had very interesting and intriguing conversations. Everything was just great. And he would call me long distance and tell me, I was listening to this sermon the other day and they said XYZ. And I'm like, okay, and all of those things. He was not the average person. He would never use profanity in my presence, period, and he's always so respectful. But then the tables turned. Day by day, he changed a little bit. And I think sometimes we kind of acclimate to the environment. So maybe the friends changed. I'm not saying it was on them. It was in him. But I could see a change.
But they create an environment where it could come on out.
Exactly. And so the things changed. Like he would never necessarily curse me, but I would hear the profanity when he's talking to some other people, which surprised me. And then I would see different things change. And ultimately, when I found out that he was for the streets, that was it right there.
You found out he was for the streets. Mm-hmm. How did you gather him back out of the streets? You don't have to go into all the details, but nobody walks down the aisle thinking they're going to find out that their husband is for the streets, especially not when they had him up on this pedestal. Yeah. But these are the 40-plus year experiences that we have to hopefully not be prepared for, but at least be aware of.
Right. And so one of the things that I did not expect this to ever be this person. I thought that he was a man of great integrity. He was always at home. He went to work. He came home. Everything looked real good. But there were times when I might be at church and he might not feel like going. And then he would go do his thing wherever and be back before I got home from church. So when I did find out that he was for the streets, it was one of my non-negotiables. So I'm like, you out, period. This is done. But he said, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I didn't mean to do it. I love
what
you.
Does
all
for
the
streets
things
mean? Can we let's define for the streets, because for the streets could mean I like to go out, hang out. For the streets could mean I like to drink a little bit more than you do. For the streets could mean I like to socialize. Like, what does this for the streets look like?
Well, in our situation, me being for the streets was really more about women.
He was a hoe.
Yeah.
It's taking too long. He was. Okay, go ahead. I just had to get that out. Yeah, but yes,
and for me, not alcohol, but drugs was the other portion of it.
Yeah. So
and it was one of those. Well, yeah. And for me,
real drugs, or was it women and weed? Because weed ain't on.
No.
It was
for
real
me.
drugs.
It was cocaine.
Oh, real drugs.
Which was my second non-negotiable.
Hoes and hard drugs.
No, right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. And it was one fueling the other. Did one.
Led to the next.
Yeah. So it was just this perpetual cycle.
What would you looking back at that? Because women, we're just speculating about what we think men are thinking about, and can you recall what led to, like, what was the first foot outside?
It was ego, really, because to be honest, and this is something when I actually, started, down that road. It was something that was it was a slow walk. It wasn't something that just all of a sudden, it was, the constant back and forth, the folk making snide remarks or these little suggestive comments.
Your wife was?
No. In terms of the other person.
Oh, the other person. Okay, got you.
Just the little suggestive comments, and it was years before something actually happened. So it was definitely a slow walk. And one of the things that I can say is, even though my wife, is the incomparable, the one of a kind, she wasn't exactly perfect. But there was nothing at home that I could say, well, this is my reason or this is my excuse for doing whatever. It was never a situation where, because of what she did, caused me to go there.
That's the part that gets us, though, because we be at home cooking the dinner thinking everything is cool, and then we see something, or then we get that feeling in our stomach, or then, and then we find out that he is for the streets, and it's like, but wait a minute, I thought everything was good at home. So how is there a way to prepare or prevent, or is it just this is who this person is and this is what we're going to have to go through?
I think it has a lot to do with that person and their maturity. Not anything that anybody else can do, but it's where they are, whether they're mature or whether they decide to be a person of integrity.
And for me, I had to come to the realization that, especially during that phase of my life, it was, and I'll just kind of go back to the Bible. It says when I was a child, I did as a child. I spake as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. And for me, that was definitely one of those phases where it was me being self-centered, selfish, and, it was that ego thing,
So this is a non-negotiable, a deal breaker. It has happened.
Both of them. The only two I had.
The only two
no
you had.
No drugs, no screwing around.
He did both.
He did both.
What is the next step for you?
So the next step for me initially was to get a divorce. So I went, retained an attorney, started making the payments. And then before that, I found out I was pregnant before I completed the payments. So I'm pregnant. Okay. this child needs to understand who their father is. He's not all that terrible. He can do better. So he got back on the track. He's doing everything right. Then I find out again, he's screwing around again. Same person.
Yes.
Same person.
I almost jumped out of this seat.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So then I started paying the attorney. After a while, stopped the proceedings. He got back on track. Everything was fine. That happened twice. Third time, I said, okay, this is it. And we had some financial problems in there, which caused me to stop paying the attorney. But the third time, we got to court. He signed the divorce papers. I signed the divorce papers. And the attorney was there and shared with the judge what was happening. And the judge said, a sister looked at me and said, I will not grant you a divorce. And I was thinking to myself, where's your boss? Because
somebody gonna grant this divorce.
Exactly. So, but she ordered us to go to counseling and come back in 6 months. But we actually got back on track and never went back to court. It was years later before they even closed the case out. Because what I discovered was that perhaps God had something different with all of these obstacles that wouldn't allow me to get out of this marriage. So I started saying, God, what do you want? And then God prompted me to change. And I did go to one counselor at our church, and she had the audacity to tell me I had some issues.
No, ma'am. No, she did not.
I was like, wait a minute. He's all wrong.
He's the one doing wrong.
Exactly. And she shared with me some of my shortcomings. So that coupled with my conversations with God, I changed my behavior, and then he could see. I think that's what helped him to see that change was possible.
So as a woman in this scenario, and I'm sure this is something that comes up with your couples, how do you not internalize it and make this about you when it's obviously, something that he's dealing with? That's part one. But then part two is, how do you take accountability of maybe you're not making this a safe space at home? Maybe you do have an attitude, whatever the counselor told you, like maybe there is some things that you need to work on. How do you not blame yourself, but then also take accountability for your part in the partnership?
Yeah. So initially I started to go down that hole, as most people will, what's wrong with me? Why is it that he's out seeking something else? What's wrong with me? And then I soon realized that there was nothing wrong with me. And anything that I thought was wrong, I could fix it, or be happy with it. So I did work on myself. And then I was able to say, you know what? This is his problem. He has the issue, not me. And so with me making the changes, and that's basically what the counselor told me, that I was not making it a comfortable environment at home, because I went from wondering what's my problem to, hey, look, I'm all of that and then some. So you need to recognize. So I had to tone it down a little bit. So there had to be like
a happy medium.
Right.
But really though, in all fairness, if there were some things, in terms of her attitude or whatever, if there was something that's present and prevailing, 9 times out of 10, it was because of something that I did, right? That it wasn't making it a warm and loving environment, creating that space for me, because she was pissed off, probably, right? And then, so, how can I expect for her to be loving and kind if, I'm taking her down this, road, creating all this aggravation and
this
frustration.
This scenario where she can't be peaceful and calm and kind all of the time.
So I'm expecting her to take the blame for me stirring the water and, getting things, stirred up. But yet she's supposed to be...
Y'all were both playing your parts in it, for sure.
Yeah, and it was definitely him. And some people who know me now think, oh, she's a minister. She's always got down on her knees and prayed and everything worked out. Well, when he looked at me, this came to mind. I'm peeling potatoes. It's like on Thanksgiving or Christmas Day or something. And I said something to him, and he looked at me and said, Psh, get out my face, and turned his back and walked away. And all of a sudden, the knife went sailing across the room. It was a slow motion and hit him in the back, stuck him in the back. So that's the kind of thing he provoked.
40 plus years. What? You know what, though? It's so necessary to hear these conversations because people love just saying, well, your grandma stayed married for 60 years.
Yeah.
But we weren't privy to what was really going on in that marriage. And if we knew what they had to work through over over a course of literally a lifetime, everybody wouldn't be, I think, running so quickly down the aisle and not being prepared to do so. Do you think that you entered the marriage with deal breakers or non-negotiables?
You know, I don't really think that I had. Well, I guess maybe I probably would have one, and it would probably be cheating because I know for me, had it been a situation where the shoe was on the other foot, I'd have been
out the door. Out the door.
Yeah,
I thought,
even though it was unspoken.
Got you. So when couples sit down on well, not on your couch because I know a lot of it is virtual, but when you are in the presence of couples premarital, how do you advise to handle like deal breakers? Do you advise that you should have deal breakers, non-negotiables, or do you encourage people that you can work through whatever life presents you?
So, of course, each situation is different. We do ask them sometimes, you know, do you have deal breakers, and let them listen to what they're saying and what their mate is saying. Many of them who have gotten to the point of really wanting to be married, they'll say things like, okay, I don't know if cheating would be my deal breaker, you know, but drugs would definitely be. And violence, which we definitely ask people to step away from the relationship if there's violence or emotional.
But you threw that knife now. Doc, you do that.
But that was not on purpose. I didn't get it. It was a reaction. Thank you, babe.
It wasn't premeditated, or are you sure it wasn't premeditated?
It was not. Everything just went together. It all clicked. Yes. But those things, you know, even with that, I said we have no experience with violence because I don't count that as violence.
Ma'am. Now, ma'am.
When I did it.
Okay, gotcha. We don't count.
When I did it.
Okay.
Or the time that I slapped him. So those things, you know.
Sometimes a good slapping. No, we do not condone violence. We don't.
We do not. No,
fellas.
Yeah,
but you know, sometimes a little yanking. Yeah. Okay, that's interesting because we've had a conversation around deal breakers, and it's usually the wife who has a laundry list of things that they're not going to deal with, and the husband who's like that one thing, like absolutely not. If you step out, I can't get through it.
Yeah.
In your experience with couples, though, have you had situations where it's been infidelity on the woman's part and they have been able to work through it? Have you witnessed that?
We have.
He said no. He started shaking his head real quick.
Right. We've seen them try, but ultimately it ends in a divorce.
Why do you think that
is something, you know, well, I believe that it's really biblical, and I associate it, right?
Okay.
With what I consider the temple experience, right? The inner court, the outer court, and the temple, right? For most men, they consider, especially if their wife or girlfriend or whatever the case is, have allowed another man to enter into that temple, it is a violation that he is very unlikely to be able to overcome, right? Because for most men, when their wives, you know, are unfaithful, not only is it a physical thing if there is intercourse that happens, right? It's an emotional thing because most women do not engage sexually with someone else unless there's an emotional connection. So for most men, it's really not so much about the physical thing, but that emotional disconnect that caused her to be able to connect with someone else. And for most men, it is one of those insurmountable obstacles. Most men. We have...
Can't think of one, huh?
I can't even think of one right now.
We've had several of them say that they would stay in it and work through it, but usually it turns out very bad and ends in divorce.
Of the couples, if you had to just not necessarily give a percentage, but do you see more infidelity on the part of the husband or the wife majority of the time?
Most of the time it's the husband. And then we've seen an increase, though, in the wives over the last, I would say, 8 years or so. But definitely the men are still leading.
And do you think, or what are some of the, because again, we want to have preventative measures, right? We don't all want to be, I don't want to be slapped in the face and then I got to get myself up and figure it out. Like if there's something that I could do, conversations that I could have, things I could be on the lookout for, ways that I can improve myself to prevent some of these issues, infidelity being one. Are there any things, like, just based on the real people? Because a lot of these podcasts, we just making up stuff, talking about what we would do if I was in this situation, but you haven't been, so what are you talking about? Right. The real people that you've seen, what is the real cause? Like, what is making people step out? And how can we prevent it?
I think it's insecurity and immaturity. You know, the insecurity, that stroking and making you feel good, you know, everything can be good at home. But if I have 10 more people telling me I'm great, or even one more telling me I'm great, then that's going to pull me outside a little bit. So I think when we come into the marriage relationship, it's important that we're mature, and that we also, before we get married, that we look at those red flags, that we pay attention to them. You know, I was actually doing a show with a young lady the other day, and she talked about being at, what is it, where you go ride the go-karts, and she was rammed by her fiance, and you know, all of this was online, but she said it was a red flag for her, but she just said, oh,
because why would you do that?
Right. But something in her told her that this was his temperament, you know? And so those red flags, even if you're not sure, just be still. Don't jump into it, you know? So,
but what about if they come on the other side of the marriage?
Then you're going to get some help. And if help does not help, then you need to get out. With our situation, I did see progress. I made changes, he made changes, and daily or monthly I could see the changes. So that's what helped me to stand. Plus, I wasn't having any luck with the divorce thing. But that's what we advise people. If you see progress, then make sure you can then, you know, look forward and have hope. But if you don't see any change,
you're going to have to make the change.
Yeah.
And if I can say this, you know, I think, you know, we get caught up in this notion, you know, we're in love and, you know, we look forward to this life happily ever after. And, you know, it's just this all fluff and glamour and glitz, right? When the reality, that is not the reality, right? And I think people really do need to realize that they need to going into marriage. It needs to be eyes wide open. Right, that you're not dismissing these things that are these little red flags to you, that you are addressing them up front if you can. You know, surely there are things that's going to happen, you know, because if you're going through life together, there are going to be obstacles. There are different things that's going to come up. But when there are these blatant red flags on the upside, on the front side of it, and you ignore them, that's ignorance. Right, so you know, we definitely encourage people to go into it eyes wide open in a loving way, right? And you know, share your concerns or whatever. If your partner is willing to make changes or whatever, take note of that. If they're not willing to make changes, take note of that too. Exactly.
Because and I remember this and I'm going to link below when y'all were on Girl Stop Playing, because I remember a part of the conversation was how a lot of times one partner is dragging the other one in, and it's like, well, if they weren't interested in premarital counseling, 9 times out of 10 on the other side of the marriage, they're not going to be willing to sit in and work on and talk through, you know, what it takes. And there's so much that you're going to have to work through and talk about, especially when we start talking about having kids. You know, throwing that into the equation. Marriage is just not all fun and games. It is not. No. And this is coming from someone who used to heavily promote, girl, I know you want to get married. Let's get this. Let's get together. Let's become wives. Right. Now that I'm a wife, I'm like, sis, it might not be for you, because it's motherhood and marriage. If you are not all in and committed, it's a shit show. Like, it is hard out here. So you talked about communication and intimacy, which, you know, we hear about finances, communication, intimacy. These are the challenges in marriage. One of the conversations that I've had around communication, though, is sometimes the lack of communication. So sometimes it's we don't know how to communicate, but a lot of times on a woman's part, it's I'm going to avoid some of these tough conversations. Talk about the impact that being an avoider can have in your long-term in your marriage.
Yeah. And that's just like sweeping something under the rug. You know, eventually it's going to pile up, and then you got a whole lot of stuff under there. So the best case scenario is go ahead and discuss it, but figure out when and how to discuss it. You know, one thing that we recommend that couples determine a specific date or 2 dates out of the month that they're going to have conversations, a check-in period. And that check-in period, then I know and my husband knows that we're going to have some tough conversation. And sometimes it might not be anything, but we still have that on the calendar. And when we do have those tough conversations, we also need to put a time limit on it. When we went through stuff, we would be up like 3 or 4 hours at night talking, you know, but do it about 45 minutes. And if you still need to say something else, then table it and say, okay, we'll address it in another couple of days. Because if you keep picking at it and one of you are not into it, you're not going to get anything positive out of it. So with communication, you're right. The lack thereof is the biggest problem. So make sure it happens. Be intentional about it. Have a check-in time.
So that they don't have to do what I do. Because y'all be seeing that email come through. Corietta is scheduled at 3:34 in the morning because we didn't have this argument, and now I got to call the people.
Right,
now we got to see the people. So instead of doing that, you already have this time set aside, so it's not like I'm in trouble, because that's what it turned into. I'm telling on you. So instead of that, it's like, no, we already have this dedicated time. We're going to meet, we're going to talk, and I'm not going into it mad because it's already on the calendar. Be better than me.
And I was just going to kind of add to that, you know, in terms of the communication. One of the things I know that we see a lot, right? And this happens to happen on the woman's side of it, that they don't want to have the conversation with their husbands, right? Because they don't want to upset him. They don't want to bother him. So, you know, we just kind of let things, you know.
Especially early on.
You know,
how does that work out for you, though?
It doesn't. I'm like, girl, be yourself.
And then the next thing you know, you have just this major explosion, you know, because things are swept under the rug.
Or you turn into like a shell of yourself because you don't want to ruffle any feathers. You don't want him to be. I was literally on the beach, y'all. You should be happy on the beach, right? You on vacation, you on the beach. On the beach in Miami, and a couple were not that far away from me, so I could hear the conversation they were having, and something had upset this husband. And the wife just kept saying, okay, but baby, you know, I want to have a good day. Like, she was really trying to diffuse it. Okay, well, let's just go to the beach. And he was just mad about whatever it was, to the point where this was like a 30-minute thing. And at the end of the 30 minutes, she's just like, well, I'm just going to go. You know, like, she was just so beaten down. Let's just go to the water. She's like dragging him, trying to hold on to his hand and make him cut to the water. He ends up going back. And it was just such an uncomfortable, awkward thing for me as a stranger to even witness. But I think it was a representation of so many marriages that I don't want to ruffle any feathers. Let me just calm you down. Let me just give you your way. Let me just... And then you end up doing yourself a disservice. How can we avoid that part of it? Is it just being assertive and standing up for yourself, or...
And it's like you said at the beginning, first of all, we need to realize, what is it that I'm asking for? Because if I come to you and say, babe, I don't want you to wear blue jeans ever again. And you say, well, I think I want to wear them on Tuesday. And I said, well, okay. You know, I'm not true to myself. I need to come back with some factual information why I don't want you to wear the jeans. And I need to have that already reconciled in my mind before I approach you with that thing, you know. So then I can give you the facts as to why I have this position. And so just a lot of times we see women will say things and then they'll change so fast. And then they come back 2 weeks later with the same issue. Stand firm on it. Make sure you solidify it in your mind before you present it. And then when you present it, you have factual information that will help them to understand what you're saying and why you're saying it.
And I think another part of it, too, is, you know, in terms of, you know, avoiding these type of situations in the marriage, is making sure that you're actually working on yourself, making sure that you're a whole individual, in this marriage, because if not, you'll just find yourself just being the shell of a person, not really adding any value, in the marriage, in a relationship, and that's not fair. And really to either of the persons, in the marriage, you have to be a whole person.
Yeah.
It's tough.
It is.
Because you become a half of a person real quick. Once you say I do, now you're the wife. Now you're not just the woman, you're the wife.
Yeah.
You got this whole nother responsibility. And then you become the mother. So now you're like a quarter of who you were. And I think that is where some of those issues come in, because it's like I got to manage all this stuff at home. To your point about the lack of family support, a lot of times the mom becomes the default parent. Now I'm stressed out. Now I got an attitude when you come through the door. Now we got something else to argue about, and all of that compounds into a tough life. Yeah. And if you are dealing with your own tough life, which most of us don't know how to deal with, we're not communicating to you. You got your own stuff going on. You're seeking whatever you're seeking to try to get through it, and then we got to come see y'all. Yeah, yeah.
And scheduling is something that we don't do in marriage. We have businesses, we make appointments, we schedule things. If we schedule things in our marriage, schedule my me time, schedule your time.
What about sex? Should we be scheduling sex?
Yes, we definitely should schedule sex. We are dealing with multiple streams of income. We're always working. We look up and 2 weeks have passed and we haven't had sex. You're already 6 times down.
Dang, so wait a minute. So what's the goal here now? What's the goal? What we going for?
It still remains a minimum of 3 times in a 7-day period.
It still remains a minimum of 3 times. I'm glad y'all said that, because me and Kendrick had a little back and forth about, is it 3 or is it 4? I knew it was 3. I told you it was 3. He said he was going to call you. I know it was 3.
Minimum of 3.
Well, Kendrick, I think we're going to get you an extra one.
Please. He's like, no, because it's supposed to be the majority. I'm like, sir, relax. 3 is good. But seriously, other than lack of intimacy, what are some other, besides scheduling it, like what are some other preventative things that we should be aware of? Like, first 1 to 3 years of marriage, when it comes to intimacy, what is your advice?
So women often say, well, I'll do it for him. Okay, he wants this. Sex is a two-way thing. Ultimately, when you get down to it, both of you hopefully are enjoying it. So embrace that mindset. This is not for him. This is for me. I enjoy it. You're looking at and thinking about things that you want to do, things you want to have done to you. That helps you to get into it. Looking at part of how they do it in the tantra sex, where you're thinking about it 24/7 and you're psyching yourself up to it. Or you go 3 days with you two touch, kiss, and everything but sex. But then on that 4th day, you go all in, And so it's making it interesting for both of you. And it's not, there is sex and there's making love, 2 different things. Both of them are necessary. A lot of times women expect making love. I just can't, because we had an argument 5 days ago, so I can't do it. You can.
You could just have a little sex.
Right, and enjoy it.
That part. So if you got an attitude, though, this is the men are from Mars, women are from Venus thing. I could piss him off at 8:05. By 8:07, he ready to go lay down. He is fine. 8:06. Look, 30 seconds later, if he pisses me off at 8:05 a.m., I might still be mad at 8:05 p.m. Like, I might just be coming down at 8:05 p.m. where that is the part that I think, I'm laughing about it, but I really think this is a serious problem, because men do not understand. Like, my body almost don't work. Like, I'm going to be looking at you like, you don't want to be on top of me, and I'm looking at you like
that, right?
Yeah,
yeah. But he's not looking at you.
He don't care. Yeah, he don't care.
But when years ago, somebody close to me had a terrible car accident. They were paralyzed. I get the call, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm just pretty much in shock. And I tell him, he just starts groping and I'm like, really? And what was your reason for that? He said it always made him feel better, so he thought sex would make me feel better in the moment.
I was just trying to play my part, trying to help her get over this situation, trying to put her in a better state of mind.
Distract you. Let me get your mind off of that.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Y'all are literally from Mars, because what?
Yes.
Okay. That is thank Thank you for saying that because that represents what men, and I don't want to just say like y'all, but y'all brains are literally different. They are wired different from ours, and so that is a perfect example of. They just can't read the room sometimes.
Right.
But that was, I believe, at that time and at my stage of maturity, that was a legitimate thing for me, in terms of my thinking that this is how can I help my wife in this moment? And that's what I deflected to.
I really appreciate you saying that right now, because for most women, we're like, no, hell no, you are crazy. But he was serious.
He was serious. Yeah.
Okay.
I was very offended.
Yeah, I would have been offended too, but that makes it make sense.
Yeah.
That y'all literally, it's a totally different thing for y'all versus how it is for us. Okay. So put it on the calendar. Yes. Make it do what it do. Okay. All right. The last segment.
And let me say a little bit about that too. I'm not saying to women, just, he might have totally disrespected you and you're supposed to go pull your clothes off and be ready for it. I'm saying he should come back and at least apologize, and you should be able to say, well, we can pick this up 2 days from now. We'll talk about this thing. Let's go ahead
you just made me
and
think
reunite.
Of yeah. Withholding sex. Talk about that. What comes to mind when I say withholding sex? Because that's a whole thing of like a barter, like a bargaining chip in marriage.
Well, let me just start here, and I'm gonna go to the Bible on this one. The Bible says, "Do not withhold from one another, except by mutual consent, and for a predetermined amount of time, so that you don't fall into temptation, because your body no longer only belongs to you, it belongs to your mate." And I'm going to let you go ahead and take it from there.
Yes. And that is true. And I have learned that withholding sex is not a good thing, because it really doesn't accomplish anything, but it serves to push the two of you further apart, And the reality is, if he's looking for sex, which most men are not looking to make love, or not always, then he can go and take things in his own hands. He can also go, and that chick who's been looking at him at work, he can go get it anyway, So why not go ahead and do it? It's healthy. Just like if you go walking together, you go running together, having sex helps you in terms of building up your heart rate. It helps you emotionally. It gives you a state of peace, So go ahead and do it. If you want to withhold something, don't fix dinner. Do something else, but don't make yourself do without enjoying sex.
And, if I could say this, in terms of men being wired different, I think you did say that word, wired different. And it just, came to my mind the fact that for most men we're probably two-way switches, women are three-way switches, and I'll put it like this, because for most men it oftentimes it's just a look or something or a touch that gets us to that point, whereas with women it's three ways. I feel that it's the mind, the heart, and the vagina. If those poles aren't connected, it's not going to happen. So, and I think, we don't want to minimize that part in terms of, saying that, and as we were saying that we shouldn't deprive one another, right? But it does require a little bit more for women. And I think we have to acknowledge that, in terms of for men, that it's not just that on and off switch.
And I think those are part of the conversations that have to be had, because as your body changes, as your responsibilities change, as your schedule change, if y'all are not on the same page and committed to the commitment, then I think that could definitely cause some struggles as well. Okay, so we do a segment called Wifey for Lifey. So I want y'all to look in this camera right here, each of you, and just give one piece of advice for a wife in her first year of marriage. Her goal is to be wifey for lifey. She's trying to be 40 plus years in, hopefully more than that. One piece of advice for her to be wifey for lifey right here in this camera.
I would say to love yourself. Always make sure you look good, make sure you feel good. People are attracted to confidence, so love yourself.
And for me, I would say, remember the covenant. The covenant is really that it's two people entering into an agreement that they're going to achieve a goal, mutual goal together.
I love it. Okay, so for the people who need to call y'all, because there's a couple of y'all need to call this camera again and tell them where they can find you online. I know y'all got some events going on, so how can they stay connected with everything y'all got?
So definitely you can find us on Instagram. It's ARM, ARM _ Michael and Lorraine. And that's Lorraine with LA because there's nothing low about me.
I know that.
So
Mama knew. Once
again, it's ARM _ Michael and Lorraine on Instagram. And then our phone number is 470-403-1584.
All right, and we'll make sure that we put all of that in the show notes down below. Thank y'all so much for being here. I know that y'all probably on the floor, your edges sliding back right now. I know. Make sure you share this episode with a friend, though, because these are the necessary conversations that we need to have on the front side so that we don't have to go sitting with them on the back side, okay? Once you start backsliding in your marriage. All right, next segment, our girl TK is here for Wifey Keeps It Spicy. Stick around, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.
Hello, ladies. Welcome back to another Wifey Keep It Spicy with your girl, Takesha. I am super excited for this week's little chit chat because, one, I feel like I was a little strong-armed into this conversation. I'm going to be honest, y'all. I be trying my best to drop the jewels, the gems when it comes to being a freak, being nasty, doing all the things, enjoying intimacy with your husband, because why do all that in your single life and then give your man side lazy booty, right? No, we gonna turn up when we get the ring. That's what we really supposed to do. But I felt like I was going to be operating in disobedience if I continued down that path. So here, y'all, real quick, just to let y'all know, if this is your first time watching, we drop all the tea, all the gems, all the jewels when it comes to keeping it spicy as a wife. But this week, and it might be a series. I don't know. Y'all let me know if y'all want to flip this into a series. We're going to shift, right? Because I feel like there's a plethora of things in between the reasons why a woman cannot be as freaky for her man or show up at nighttime when those lights dim. I feel like there's a plethora of reasons why she can't do that. So before I give y'all the gems on buying stripper shoes and getting this toy and putting this pole in your room, we got to talk about something that I feel like is incredibly important and crucial. Now, it might not be for everyone, but it's for someone. Do you know that it is possible to love and enjoy a man, your husband, and not respect him? Do you know that it's possible to love your husband and not respect him? That's the question I ask, sis. Yes, it is a very real thing. And what I found out is that women are so exhausted from overcompensating in every area because their man doesn't step up in these areas that when it comes to that time at night, they like, sis, you're gonna get this little lazy side booty because I feel sorry for you and I'm here and I'm the only one you got, right? You can get into the mode of doing so much all the time and he's doing so little in your mind that you don't even feel like he deserves for you to really pull out the stripper version of yourself or whatever, fill in the blank, the porn star version of you. And so I have to speak on this because I feel like so many women, especially those that have been married for a long time, or some of y'all that done ignored a lot of red flags and you still said, I do, this video is for you. Now, I do think it's possible to regain respect for your man. I don't think all hope is lost, but it's going to take a lot from you. And it's going to take a lot of maturity from you. So listen here, sis, what we are going to do, if you connect with this, if you feel like, girl, I'm doing so much, I'm a professional woman, I had my bag before I got him, especially if y'all got married later in life, you got married in your late 30s, your 40s, you're like, shoot, I'm good, I look good, I can get any man I want, like, God bless you, you done got a trophy, this is good for you, this is for you. Just like your man has to learn leadership and masculinity in a lot of ways, sis, you have to learn submission and femininity too. Because you have been leading your life for so long and you've been making all the decisions, you've been the boss in your company, you've been the leader in your friends group, you've been the smartest. It takes intentionality and aggression to learn the opposite, to learn to fall back, to learn to follow, to be submissive and compassionate and kind. And so what I want you to do is I want you to have a real conversation with your husband. Now, don't go and tell him that you don't respect him, but I need you to have a conversation with him and let him know that you are transitioning into a new woman, that you want to be all that God has called you to be when it comes to being a wife, which is compassionate and kind and patient, which is a nurturer, which is a submissive wife. And as you're telling him this is what I did with my husband. I said, hey, things going to be different. Because he wasn't used to it. He was used to me leading in a lot of ways. He was used to me giving him neck. So I had to warn him. I didn't want to just switch up. I'm like, hey, let me let you know I'm transitioning. I'm shifting into this woman. And as I do this, I'm doing this because I trust you. And I know that you are created to be a phenomenal leader. But I must admit, I have been in the way. I have strong-armed my way in a lot of decisions. I've pushed you to the passenger seat. I want you to get back in the driver's seat, Daddy. I want you to make the decisions again. I want to support you. I want you to know that I trust your leadership, right? And having these conversations with our husband, not only to ask them for grace as we are transitioning, but letting them know, hey, it's yours. I don't want it anymore. And I promise you, as you see your husband step up more, as you see him making more decisions, as you see him saying, setback, I got this, baby, you're going to want to throw it back at the end of the night. You're going to want to do it well. You're going to want to do it just like how he likes it, okay? And so a lot of us have to admit, we've built a man that takes the back seat a lot because I got it. I'm good. I'll take it out. I'll do that. No, baby, all 2024, we are going to sit in that passenger seat. What they call them, passenger princess, whatever. We're going to set our cute little tails over there, and not saying we don't have ideas or thoughts, but we're going to let our man take the lead so that we can gain that respect back for them so that when it comes to being spicy, oh, that's going to be light work. So y'all let me know how y'all feel about this. Let me know, are you going to have that conversation with your man? Are you going to let him know, hey, I'm ready to transition. I'm tired of wearing pants. Give me my skirt back. If you're going to do that, let me know in the comments down below and share this with a girlfriend because it's going to help somebody. Okay, until next time, y'all.